Welcome, everyone. My name is Steve Wattenmaker, and I am Bruce's first cousin on our mother's side. Bruce and I like to consider ourselves as much brothers as cousins. In fact, we called each other Cuzbro. Bruce went through life with energy, with intellect, certainly athleticism, with curiosity and awareness, and with humor. Bruce liked to have fun, and Bruce was fun to be around. Bruce led that full life against a backdrop of hereditary depression, and it seized him every now and again, and he each time successfully fought through it. He was courageous. Bruce also had true loves. His little sister Linny, who was born with Down syndrome and for whom Bruce cared tenderly, and Carol Amendola, his love of his life for 43 years, and all of you. So thank you for attending today and participating in this celebration. It's wonderful to have you and to have all of us, because I'm going to try to do the tech stuff to move this along. I want to introduce my wife of 28 years, Joan Timoney. Joan and Bruce and Carol were exceptionally close for that whole 28 years. And what I'd like to do is to ask Joan to sort of shepherd us through the first part of this celebration. So again, thank you all. And Joan, can you jump in?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks to everybody for joining. I think probably like many of you, Bruce and I bonded over long discussions on current events and, of course, sports. I'm a Philadelphia girl, so a Philadelphia girl and a Pittsburgh guy can get going on sports, I can tell you that. Carol and I, when we visited them, would bond over some great long morning walks. And of course, it was just the two of us, Bruce being such an excellent night owl. So really some good morning time with Carol. And I know some of you have known Bruce all his life. Others have connected at certain points of his life. And we know from your phone calls and emails, a number of you have some lovely things to share. So we look forward to that. What we've done to get us started is ask several people to make short remarks, and then we'll open it up, as Steve said, to everybody. And so, again, so we all have a chance to speak, or whoever wants to speak can speak. We'll try to keep it to a few minutes each. So with that, we thought it would be especially appropriate to start this program with a tribute to Carol Amendola, Bruce's life companion, who, as many of you know, passed away in 2023. And to help us celebrate Carol and also Carol and Bruce's life together, I'd like to introduce her beloved niece, Julianne Amendola, to share some thoughts with us. So, Julianne.
Thanks so much, Joan, and
Hey, Julianne.
thank you all for being here. It's nice to see you virtually. I'm Julianne Amendola. This is my husband, Dan Jensen, and I'm assuming there may be folks on this call who perhaps knew Carol longer than I did, but I did know her my whole life. She was my father's sister. He sends his greetings as well, as does my brother Michael and his family. Unfortunately, they could not be with us. But you know, Carol, the Amendola side of our family we always like to say small but mighty. So it was just my dad and his sister, and then my brother and I, and so we were very close. And I was very fortunate with Carol. I got to have the cool aunt. Right. So Carol was always the one that was doing all of the fun things. She was traveling. She obviously had this wonderful career as an educator and a counselor. We shared so many conversations, both as I was growing up, and sort of leaning on her guidance and her expertise. And of course, there was such a family love of family and sharing our heritage and getting together. And always, as Joan said, lots of spirited conversation about sports. So it was a tremendous, with all due respect, Joan, we were Steelers fans, always will be. I think it's in the blood. And one of my favorite photos ever was my brother as a very small child at his very first Steelers game, which he was taken to by my Aunt Carol. So that was something that kept us all very close. I was lucky to spend time with her growing up. to stay in her cool condo with the pool and go out to dinner and have girl time. And of course, for much of that time, Bruce was in her life as well. So they got together when I was still quite young. So Bruce was always a part of our family gatherings. And of course, when they moved to Vegas, we got to spend a lot of time with them there. So it was great to see how much they had in common.
Even cooler.
It was even cooler to go visit them in Vegas, and to see how much they shared both in their love of education and travel. And I'm sure there are more than a few tennis stories that will be shared later in the call. So we got to spend a lot of time with them together in Vegas, where Carol would sort of grant us gifts from giveaways that she had picked up at various casinos. And Dan would get to impress Bruce with dinners on his expense account and some tickets to shows.
Yeah.
So it was rare that we could impress Bruce, but that was always a goal.
We tried.
We tried, and we had some fabulous times together. So it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I want to thank you for your care for them. I want to thank Joan and Steve for arranging this time. I think we all regret that we didn't have more time with them and that they didn't have more time together, but very fortunate to have had them both in our lives.
Thank you both so very much. I love that, the cool aunt. I'm gonna park that, and I'm not gonna bite on the sports, jab there. I'm just gonna think about the cool aunt. I know there are a number of members of the Janoff family at our celebration too. And so we wanted to ask Barry Lieberman, who is Bruce's cousin on the Janoff side, to share some thoughts from that perspective. So if we can turn to you, Barry.
Okay. I'm supposed to be unmuted, am I?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I've known Bruce since I was a wee boy. My mother and his father were brother and sister. Our families got together a lot every year from the time I was, pre-kindergarten until my teenage years even. But by then, Bruce was already in college, so he wasn't always there. Basketball. And me being 5'4", wasn't very good. We're in the driveway in Charleroi, or at the bottom of the driveway, but it always seems so high, a lot higher than it should be, but I'm sure it was legal. And we had some fun there. And then I remember distinctly that he had a bumper pool table in his game room. And I was fascinated with this. I mean, it was all about geometry and angles, and I got really, really good at it. And it was all because of him. And I even got one for my own house. So it was a good time. And then I went to visit Bruce when he was teaching in Ohio. Was it Ohio University? Okay, good. And his life was never a dull moment, I can tell you that. I met a lot of his friends and his tennis partners, and like you said, he was a good night owl to hang with. And then I only visited him once in Vegas, but Carol and I spent more time together than Bruce. Bruce was in his little sports book thing with smoking cigars and betting on games, and Carol and I liked the slots, so we had a lot more in common. That's about all I have right now. I just know I miss him, and we kept in touch over the years by email, and he always was trying to get me to bet on games, and I was always trying to get him to bet on my fantasy sports. And it's something about Bruce is that you could not talk to him for years at a time, and when you do, it was just like you talked to him yesterday.
Yeah.
So the love was always there.
Yeah.
That's about it for me.
Thank you so much, Barry. I like that never a dull moment too, right? And thinking back a little bit more to Bruce's life in Pittsburgh, we have a number of his friends from those early days of his life. And I understand that there's Stu Samuels and Bruce played AZA softball together. I think they were probably in their teens at that point. So we had asked Stu if he would speak to some of those youthful days with Bruce, and I guess what was the already very athletic Bruce Janoff. So, Stu?
First of all, just to be clear, go Eagles.
Thank you, Stu.
You're welcome.
I'm not going to unmute you ever. Sorry, go ahead.
And the second thing I'd like to say, I put together some thoughts, and I have to apologize for those thoughts which are not quite accurate, since they're probably, some of them are 70 years old. My memory doesn't go back that far. I first met Bruce in 1956 when we were both 15, and he joined the AZA softball team, as Joan said. For those of you who are not familiar with AZA, it's a Jewish youth organization. Bruce was an excellent athlete. He played basketball, he ran track, but he did not take up tennis until much later in life. Fortunately, since he couldn't beat me then. He became very accomplished at tennis when he did take it up. When he joined the AZA softball team as our shortstop, he quickly earned the name Rocky or Rock because of sometimes deliberate and sometimes inadvertent things he said or did, which, for lack of a better word, were somewhat goofy. For example, after one softball practice, Bruce came in from the field and was shaking his hand. He said his hand was killing him, was hurting him right below the index finger. I asked him how he was holding his glove. When he showed me, it was clear why he was hurting. He was wearing the glove the wrong way. He had never been taught to hold the glove the correct way, even after 15 years. Every time he caught the ball, it smashed into this part of his hand. So he was hurting for a good reason. After I told him that he might try it a different way, he just shook his head and moved on. That was Rocky. But looking back, Bruce's overwhelming characteristic, despite his outwardly fun-loving attitude, was his kindness and compassion. I never heard Bruce say a bad thing about anyone. That compassion was particularly evident in his attitude toward his sister Lynn. As Steve mentioned, Lynn was a Down syndrome child, and in those days, Down syndrome children usually were not seen in public a great deal. Not so in Lynn's case. Bruce often brought Lynn to softball games and to other events so that everyone could meet her. In fact, my wife remembers the time when we went out to dinner with Bruce and he brought Lynn along. He continued that caring attitude for Lynn his entire life. It's my belief, and some of you may be able to correct me, that Bruce and Carol did not move to Las Vegas until Lynn passed away. In the mid to late 70s, Bruce had some difficulties, as Steve mentioned, and actually came to stay with our family in New Jersey for a couple of weeks to clear his mind. He mostly hung around the house, had long talks with my wife while I was at work. He enjoyed having extended discussions with both my children as well. My son, who was 7 or 8 at the time, remembers when he made a booth out of giant Tinker toys, from which he was selling some of his drawings, as they were, from the booth. He remembers Bruce giving him a Subway token in exchange for one of those drawings. That was Bruce caring about someone else's feelings. Bruce loved to gamble, loved to take photos, enjoyed meeting anyone and everyone. He particularly loved taking photos and introducing himself to well-known people he spotted. There was nobody quite like Bruce, and I shall miss him. I really already do.
Thank you so much for that. Thanks for bringing in. That's so true about the photos too, and especially thank you for bringing in Lynn. Really appreciate that. Turning now to Bruce's academic life. So, as you know, and Stu just referenced it as well, he had an impressive academic life. He earned his PhD in literature and film at Ohio University, we were thinking that a real highlight of his career very early on was the teaching he did. He taught college-level literature courses in Southeast Asia to American service members during the Vietnam War period. It was a program operated by the University of Maryland. And we have one of those overseas that's not easy to say, Marylanders with us today, who also taught in Asia and was a friend of Bruce's from that era. And so, Bob DeGrosse, if I can ask you to follow up on Stu's great comments, that would be lovely. So, Bob, what I think we can do is, continue to see if you can find Bob in the participant list. But we have a sort of related academic speaker too, and that is that following the Southeast Asia work, I think many of you know Bruce spent really the bulk of his professional career at the University of Pittsburgh. And so Leo Collins, who's with us today, met Bruce during those years and was going to bring in the Pitt time for our reminiscences today. So I wonder if we can go to Leo and then we can come back to Bob if he's there.
Much, Jones and Steve. I feel like I know you, but I don't know if we ever met. Probably through Bruce. But thank you for everything you've done for Bruce and Carol over the years. I also want to thank you, Steve, for inserting a photo that I think you said you were going to do, because I needed a focal point to accurately and succinctly represent the 4 decades that Bruce spent time as an academic. And there it is. This is 1994, shortly after I moved to Pittsburgh. It's a wonderful photo of Bruce and Carol on the right, 4 other friends of ours, Barb and Don Brandt, and Lynn and Pat DeMay. My late wife, Maureen, is of course the one in the white outfit, and I at the bottom. This was right in the middle of Bruce's years at Pitt. And while I did not become an academic, at least professionally, for another 12 or 13 years, I connected with Bruce immediately as an academic type of a thinker, free-spirited, open-minded, and willing to listen and converse on any topic. I have a couple of interesting stories to share about Bruce's career over 4 decades. I wish I'd spent more time talking to him about his time in Vietnam in the 70s. At the end of my little part of this eulogy, I'm going to tell him about a story from the late 70s. But for now, I want to tell a story about Bruce at Pitt. One week in the late 90s, he asked me to substitute for a class he was teaching in that beautiful Cathedral of Learning and down in Oakland, up on the 35th floor, close by. And I said, Bruce, that makes a lot of sense. I have degrees in chemistry, and you want me to teach a class in literature or film or something like that. And his reply was, don't worry, Leo. No one pays attention to subs anyway. And secondly, don't worry, because most of the students are millennials. And lastly, he said, the only way you'll get them to pay attention to you is to tell them there will be no final exam and offer to give them an A for the class. So a good bit of advice from Bruce when I finally went into teaching some 12 years later. The other story I wanted to share is Bruce as a teacher. Quite an unbelievable story. And I don't know if many of you knew that in the late 70s, Bruce spent several semesters, maybe a year and a half at Emory University. The late 70s, mid to late 70s, I happened to be at Emory University during that time as an undergraduate. Bruce had a film class that was a talk on campus. It was popular and everybody who took the class talked about it. My roommate took that class, and I called him last week and said, tell me something you remember about Bruce's class. And he went on for 20 minutes. It was a class on the study of film prior to talkies. And my first thought was, how could you spend 16 weeks in a class talking about those films? But it was very interesting, according to my roommate, who went on and on about it. For example, he mentioned the film that caused an awful lot of controversy over the years. That was a non-talking film I don't have my hands on it right this minute. About the Ku Klux Klan. Obviously a touchy subject. At the time it was made in 1960. Also in the 70s when I was at Emory, as a time when desegregation was a big topic. And unfortunately, even in today's climate, this discussion is relative. So anybody who's ever taught teaches because they are rewarded by the joy and hopefully the inspiration they get from their professors and teachers. And this is just one example of a student who took a class 50 years ago and remembered Bruce fondly over such an interesting class. I think you can all look back and think about one or two teachers you might have had 50 years ago and think of one or two that had inspired you and interesting stories to share. I certainly had a few. And also had a few whose names I can't even remember. But Bruce, among many talents, and I wish I had time to tell a lot of tennis stories about him. Amongst his talents and charms, I think the greatest quality was his ability to communicate and tell stories. The last time I talked to Bruce was about 2 years ago. The only way you could get in touch with Bruce was in the middle of a Steelers game, and you were very lucky if he picked up the phone. Well, I was able to get him to pick up the phone about 2 years ago. We talked for a couple of minutes about Carol, and then he said, "Leo, I've got to go. I've got at least 10 bets to make before the third quarter." And he said, "But don't go away for long. I've got a few more stories I want to tell you." That's all I remember. Bruce is a great storyteller and a friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leo. That's a wonderful perspective on Bruce as a storyteller. And I think we all appreciate the reference to the Cathedral of Learning too, right? So thank you for that. I think we can hear a bit more actually about the academic piece and the Southeast Asia, because I think Bob is good to go now, if that's right.
I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay. I'm Bob DeGrosse, and I met Bruce in the fall of 1972 at a faculty meeting of the University of Maryland University College in Japan. We both had arrived from the States on our new adventure teaching on military bases in Asia. Once we completed our orientation to military life in University College, all the faculty departed for their teaching assignments on different bases in different countries. I went to southern Thailand, where they were doing B-52 raids on North Vietnam. And I believe Bruce went to Okinawa. We did not become friends until the second term. We were both teaching just outside of Tokyo, Japan. We found that we shared common interests. We were both avid tennis players. I was a historian specializing in the history of ideas, and Bruce taught English and specialized in literature, in particular American literature. At the drop of a hat, he would wax eloquently on Joseph Heller and Catch-22. I don't feel I could properly memorialize Bruce without a sentence or two on Catch-22, as it also captured one of his other passions, which was film of American classics. Catch-22 captured many of the characters in the wartime situation who faced the absurdity of life. I always felt that Bruce was well aware of the absurdities he faced. Bruce and I often taught on the same basis, where our routine was tennis during the day, dinner, and then teaching at night. Between semesters, we often traveled together. In Asia, we joined a tour sponsored by the Officers Club. We went to India, Nepal, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Hong Kong. we transferred to the university, the European division of Maryland after 2 years, and ended up teaching together for 2 terms in Turkey, across from Istanbul. Again, our routine was tennis, often dinner, and teaching in the evening and travel. Between semesters in Turkey, we traveled to Egypt. Whether in Asia or Egypt, Bruce always seized the opportunities to ride elephants, climb Mount Fuji, or explore the pyramids. In 1975, we both returned to the home campus of Maryland at College Park for our 5th and final year. We chose apartment living with places a few blocks from each other in Adelphi, Maryland. And our routine was, again, tennis, often dinner, and teaching at night. This lasted until I got married in 1976 to my wife, Gail, and Bruce was one of our ushers. In 1977, Bruce left the University of Maryland for a new teaching opportunity at Emory, and our contact became infrequent, but whenever we talked or visited, the years melted away, and our experience remained strong memories for me. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Bob. And it's fun to hear about those early years back then when you really saw that the birth of, I guess, that incredible love of travel that you shared with him and that he then shared with Carol over the years too. We're going to take a move now from Pennsylvania to Vegas, and we have our last 2 speakers are really going to talk about that time in the Las Vegas area. So as you all know, when Carol and Bruce went to Las Vegas, I think initially the idea was Bruce was going to retire, but he ended up teaching at UNLV for a bit too. But he and Carol also became very active in the Sun City Anthem community in Henderson, which is just outside Las Vegas, as you know, for those of you that live there or visited them there. And, no surprise given everything we've been hearing today. But Bruce they were both very active members of Sun City's Lifelong Learning Club. And Bruce worked with one of our guests today, Juanita Brown, worked in a leadership role in that club. And Juanita was going to share a little bit with us about working with Bruce in that lifelong learning setting, which I think is so very Bruce, as we've heard too. So Juanita, can I turn it to you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi,
Yes.
Juanita. Yes, thank you.
Very much.
Good. Well, it's interesting. I moved to Las Vegas myself in 2018, and I'd been closely affiliated with OLLI in California, so I was looking for something similar. OLLI means Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And so when I saw that there was a lifelong learning club, I came and there was Bruce, and we sort of immediately clicked. As it turns out, I was an East-West Center grantee in their first junior year program, so I was extended into Japan and at Sophia University, which is a University of Maryland base. They used Sophia University for the class. So then we just really bonded. And ever since then, he sort of took me under his wing and I got involved with lifelong learning and still am. I was its president after him for a while, and now I'm the program director, and he'll always be part of the lore of lifelong learning. So I'm so glad that I had a chance to meet him and that he was kind and sort of took me under his wing. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Juanita. I guess you could still see the professor in Bruce in that way too, right?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. And we will go to our last speaker for this formal part of the program. This also is tennis, so we won't have missed the tennis piece. And it's really about Bruce's tennis adventures in Las Vegas. And I feel like he would want us to say this. And so in 2009, he advanced to the finals of the National Senior Games tennis doubles in Stanford, California. So I think we all remember that. That was a lot of fun when that happened. But we have asked his friend Robert Shahan to say a few words about those years with Bruce on the courts in Las Vegas. So, Robert, can you wind up this part of the program for us?
Well, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Gosh, I don't know how to say this. It's been a while since I've seen Bruce. It was about 10 years ago. I just graduated from University of Southern California, and I remember how excited he was as a person. So I ended up going back home, living with my older parents at like kind of a retirement community. But the life that Bruce like exuded and just showed was incredible. Um, he was more than a tennis player. He was a poet. He was a writer, and he was a friend. He was an absolutely excellent person. And I was 22 years old when I met him. I was young, but I recognized what he was and who he was, and I miss him.
Mm.
I miss him. But he's a
Yeah.
like my favorite thing. Okay, can I share this, please? So I remember I was 21 years old, and he actually had tickets to the to a nightclub there downtown, and he ended up giving me these tickets, and we went, and you know what we talked about the entire time? We talked about poetry.
That's great.
We talked about poetry. Anyways, I'm getting a little lost in it, but anyways, Bruce is a wonderful, wonderful person. There are very few people like him, and he had a zest for life, and he just he cared, and he was excellent. Anyways, that's all I got to share. But he was wonderful.
Thank you so much. Love the zest for life comment. Thank you, Robert. Before we open the mic to anyone else that would like to say something, Steve and me wanted to give a special shout out to two people. And one is Holly and Joe Marsili. Some of you will know them well. Bruce and Carol's dear friends and neighbors in Sun City Anthem. They're also Pittsburghers, so it's no surprise that they've got the hearts they have. And they were by his, I'll get a little choked up here, but they were by his side in every way, especially these last years. Sorry, you guys, and we have so much gratitude to them. And then two. So thank you, Holly and Joe. We also want to give a special thanks to David Chandler. David was a student of Bruce's at UNLV and later became his financial advisor and true friend. And again, much like Holly and Joe, just has so stepped up for Bruce these last couple years of his life. And so special thanks to you, David, as well. So thank you all for getting us started in such a beautiful way and taking us through those different aspects of Bruce's life. So now I'm going to turn things back to Steve so we can open it up to anyone else that wants to say a few words, and raise your hand, and then he can call on you all.
Thanks, Joan. And I'm going to remind, that was beautiful. I'm going to remind everybody how to do that, which is that little react thing at the bottom. If you click it about halfway down, then you'll see raise hand. And we have one already, that is Ann Witcher. And Ann, I'm unmuting you. Hang on. Ann, go ahead and say something. I think you're unmuted. Nope, not yet. Hang on. Sometimes it takes a second to unmute.
Is that it?
Now, yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ann Wichner-Levin, and I'm going to first say that, you know, if what happened hadn't happened, I would have texted Bruce today about the two Jews on the U.S. hockey team that won gold. Because the thing is, that the guy who made the goal is the only person that's won an Olympic medal in hockey that also had a bar mitzvah. And I know Bruce would have loved that.
There you go, Ann.
I would have texted that to him. So, I'll have to ask Barry if I met Barry, because I know I met one of his cousins named Barry. So I met Bruce during my freshman year of college at OU in 69, 70, and I was on their tennis team. It wasn't a great tennis team, but I always played tennis. And he found me on the court, and there's a big age difference at that time, 11 years. And so what started as a friendship, not a romantic relationship, continued up until now. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But one of the things I want to end up is this humongous concentric circle that, you know, maybe it would happen with everyone, but I'll talk about some of these funny things. So I was a freshman and I was an English major, and I think Bruce thought I was a lot more intellectual than I was because I was an English major. He was wrong about that. But I love tennis. I love sports. I was Jewish. I loved movies, but we had such a good friendship. And I knew about all the women he dated at OU, and I was happy to be in the kind of place that I was with him. He came to visit my family in Youngstown. I met his sister. I met his parents. I met his aunt and uncle. We just were good friends. And he was good to me. And I like to believe I was good to him because we both shared sort of an understanding about depression and dealing with things when they weren't going so well. I followed his career after OU, but one of the things when I met him, I found out my cousin in Pittsburgh, who's his age, was in law school with him when he decided he'd try law school. So that was like the first circle, of connection. It's just crazy. Then I followed him. I knew all about Emory. I knew about him, teaching for Maryland. He kept in touch with me all those years. His father even got in touch with me after he left Emory, and we know that story, and it all worked out. And obviously, we're all grateful that he ended up back in Pittsburgh, and and so at that time we reconnected. I worked at Carnegie Mellon for years and years in student affairs, so he would often come down and see me, or we would meet up when he was teaching at Pitt. I got to know Carol, and because I'm a tennis player, I got to play against Glen Creek with my team, and we usually lost, unfortunately. Who's ever on the Glen Creek team will appreciate that. They were great. They were great players. So then Bruce, I got married later in life, and my husband was between my age and Bruce's age, and we had a child right away. But the damnest thing is my husband's a CPA, and several of his clients went to school with Bruce at W&J. Then it turns out my brother-in-law went to W&J with Bruce and also knew Bruce. So it's just such a, it's a crazy world. I don't know if it's Pittsburgh or it's Bruce, or, if you start talking about people that, have a lot of, like, I don't know, Bruce just has so many connections in his life for all these different reasons. The one thing I will say, I know he went through struggles, but I admire Bruce that he was able to figure out that he needed to do what he needed to do to make himself safe and happy, and, give up what it would have taken for him to stay at Emory, because we talked about that. And again, I'm grateful for his friendship, and I should have known something was off because I would send him Borowitz, Andy Borowitz, every time I got one that just was better than the other one. And he would always write back that he appreciated it, or, because, we both felt the same way about where we are right now with politics. But I value his friendship. I was a lot younger. I still feel like I'm younger. So he was sort of a mentor to me, and a role model in many ways. And Carol. Okay, here's the deal with Carol. My best friend lives in Upper St. Clair, and all her cousins and kids had Carol as their guidance counselor or teacher. So it just, it went on and on and on. So I was glad I got to, be able to be with them in Pittsburgh.
It's a small world, Anne. It's a very
It is a small world.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to move now. I said there are a lot of hands up. I'm going to have to move to David Chandler, and I'm going to try to unmute David and see if I think I have. David, I think you're
Can you hear me?
unmuted now.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks. And it's pretty awesome to hear everybody. And I've known Bruce. I took his English literature class at UNLV in 2006 after I got out of the Marine Corps. Ran back into him again in my profession in 2011, 2012. So I've known him and Carol for, a little over 20 years, besides him just being my professor. I remember him going on and being very passionate in class, and English literature was not my forte. Being a financial advisor, I preferred math over over English. The only man that can go on about the Rosetta Stone for hours. And even in my work, as I've met with him, got to know him and Carol throughout the years, I continued to get those classes. Typically, I got to hear about everybody. I've heard about all the stories. Now I get to tie them all together, hearing you guys in the background, and met a lot of really good people through him and Carol. I remember how much they loved each other. I could hear how Carol was the fun aunt. I could see it. She'd banter and give Bruce hard time, and it was really cool seeing them interact with each other, and how much they've traveled and all the photos that they've taken. I've been through all the stories, and it was an absolutely pleasure knowing Bruce for the time that I've known him.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I think Jack Bergstein. I'm trying to go in order, and if I'm not going exactly in order, I'm sorry, but sorry, Jack. Okay, there we go. Give me a second.
I should be on now.
You are. Hi, Jack.
I was going to be even less talkative until Anne brought up about Bruce going to law school. I happened to be the person responsible for him going to law school. And it was because he had not told his parents that he had dropped out of medical school. Bruce had gone 1 year of medical school, did not like it. And my wife and I were just recently married at that time, my late wife. And I knew that Bruce was in town. I called him and he came over to our apartment. And when he told me or told us that he had dropped out of medical school, and before the end of the evening, I convinced him to go to law school. After a year of law school, he dropped out of that, and ultimately he ended up, as you have heard this evening. So, Anne, thank you for bringing back that memory. What I did want to say, and I'll make it brief, that you referenced, some of you referenced his relationship with Lenny. Lenny lived much longer than the medical people ever anticipated with the illness that she had. And Lenny was the friendliest young lady. And I was a lawyer, I still am, and I represented Bruce's parents who came to me to determine what they wanted to put in their will, and they were reluctant to name Bruce as the person to take care of Lenny after they were gone. And they expressed it that they weren't sure that Bruce will do it. Well, what I want to tell you is Bruce did everything, whether he was in Egypt, whether he was overseas, whether he was in California or Vegas, wherever he was, he absolutely stayed in touch with Lenny almost on a daily basis. And I was so proud of him, and I still am. Bruce and I were friends with Stuart, who spoke a little earlier. I thank you for allowing me to speak. And like all of you, I will miss Bruce. I had been keeping in touch with him for all these 70 years, and I will miss him.
That's
Thank
lovely.
you.
That's lovely. Thank you, Jack, so much. So much. I think the next person who had their hand up was Dave Berman. And let me unmute you, Dave, and see if I was successful in doing that.
Yep. All set? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been out here in Sun City Anthem about 5 years longer than Bruce and Carol were. So I had already settled into the community and got to know him pretty early on after they arrived, because we found out things that we had in common. And this is a community of about 13,000 residents. It's pretty big. We come from all over the country, as you can imagine. It's a retirement community, lots of sunshine and lots of air conditioning in July and August. And I was trying to search my mind to remember, how did I first meet Bruce? Because we knew each other over the years on so many different levels. And it finally dawned on me, I was been running a blog for the community for about 19 years, had over 3,000 subscribers, and he reached out to me and paid me compliments on my writing. Although I was not a lifelong academic like him, I had taught writing for communications at Boston University. And that was just one of many things we found that we had in common. The gambling, you've heard something about. Our nearby resort of Green Valley Ranch, I would see them there all the time. We occasionally, the three of us, meaning Carol too, would get together over a meal. Bruce was I think some of you who knew him, was a very smart gambler. He did his homework. Carol not so much. I used to kid her. I ran a football pool for a number of years, and Bruce participated under the name of Dr. J, and he was a perennial winner, or right up near the top among the 20 or so people I had in it. Carol, I used to say to her, "You're like the person who goes to the dog track and you decide to bet on the last dog that peed on the track." So that was the different levels that they had that they operated under. But we had other things in common too. He, as you know, he had taught in Asia for University of Maryland, and I had lived for 2 years in Taiwan, and that gave us something to talk about. And then there was his love of biography. And when we were both members of the Lifelong Learning Club that you heard our friend Juanita speak about, and he was even president of it for several years, he inspired me to begin giving talks to them because we talked about what it took to put a good talk together. And he didn't start out as an expert on what he was going to talk about. He did the homework, he did the research, and then gave a lot of wonderful talks in the nature of biographies, which inspired me to give one on Jackie Robinson that I worked 6 months on. And it's just that we valued communicating. We valued talking about so many things. And it's such a rare thing in this world when we can just communicate with each other on so many different levels. I'll always cherish about him. And if you want to know how close we were, I'm one of those people here who when he had his major surgery in the final years, he had to show me what it looked like. And I'm just glad my wife wasn't there to see it when he opened his shirt. Just a wonderful person who, like everyone here, made my life better for having known him.
Jack, thank you. Thank you so much. Let me have, I think Ken's been patiently waiting. Ken, there you go. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that Bruce liked to do in Henderson was go to trivia. He went to trivia. The last time I knew, I visited him in 2023, and he was still going to trivia every week at Shakespeare's. So I have 2 trivia questions, and I won't wait for an answer. I'll help you with the answer. But every time I went over to his house, he offered me a beer. And it was always, can anybody guess? A Samuel Adams. And I will drink this afterwards, after our tribute in his memorial. And the other funny thing, and it's a very small thing, but when he moved to Henderson, a wild desert tortoise, he found a wild desert tortoise in his front yard. So he takes it out back and thinks he's going to keep it and gives it a name. And I was wondering if anybody knew its name, that he named it.
I know it. I know it, but
Flipkins?
Flipkins.
I don't know how he came up with that, but a couple days later, the turtle is gone. And we wondered, like, well, how can a turtle run away? Just go out and it can't get very far. But he never did find the turtle again. But those are my little trivia questions for Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. One of the things that was all over Bruce's house, and I actually brought one of them back to Washington, D.C., in memory of Flipkin, was a lot of stuffed little turtles that were around. He had around the house. So
the only pet I knew he ever had.
Yeah, for some reason, Flipkin played a big role.
Yeah.
One thing is, when I signed off on Dave Berman, I think I called you Jack Dave. I didn't mean to. I know you're David Berman. Pam and Bill Topper actually lived right in back and above Carol and Bruce. And let me call on them now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Got it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. As Steve just said, Bill and I were Bruce and Carol's backyard neighbors, and we kind of had a lot in common. I graduated from OU, and Bill is a college professor, so we had some very interesting conversations with them. But I just want to tell you, the first time that we met Bruce, um, we were in our backyard and we heard somebody behind us and they said hi. We said hi. We looked over our fence, and those of you that know Bruce know that he loves to garden in his later years. We only knew him for about 10 or 11 years. And he had built this area where he planted a garden like one would have in Ohio. And we looked down at it and he's going, "Do you know what this plant is?" I said, "Yeah, that's carrots." He goes, "Well, you can't answer these because you're from Ohio. You let Bill answer." So then he says, "Do you know what this is?" And I don't think Bill did. It was an unusual plant, but he loved that. And cactus, he had so many cacti in his backyard. That was something else he loved to do. He just loved to be outside. He was out there all the time, working in his backyard, and it was lovely. Carol, I have to also say, we also saw that scar, Dave. We went to visit him when he was in the hospital and for that surgery, and he pulls his shirt up and I went, "Oh, okay." But we used to do things with both Bruce and Carol. He just absolutely adored Carol. When Carol became ill, he commented to me that he never knew that Carol did so much around the house and did so many things, took care of so many things. And we visited Carol also in the nursing home, and Bruce saw her like every day, went in every day to see Carol. That really took his heart when that happened. But he was great neighbors. We loved being around them, and we miss him. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Pam and Bill. I want to add just one thing about gardening. Bruce had a huge garden, sort of a remote community garden he had to drive to when he was in Pittsburgh. And one day when we were visiting, he said, "Do you want to help a little bit in the garden? Maybe you can water." And I thought, well, that's fun. I get the hose and, Bruce can do the digging and I'll do. Well, it turns out that garden, which was pretty remote, did not have a water source. So what watering in Bruce's garden meant was lugging 5-gallon jerry cans filled with water up a hill. So that was it was a wonderful garden, and I'm sure they enjoyed it, but I can't say that I enjoyed it very much. I don't see any other hands up, so I just want to say thank you for being Bruce's friends and family, and we'll all remember him. And the other thing is that, Barbara Crawford has her hand up, and I think we really just it's 5 after. Barbara, we're going to make you the last one live. So go ahead. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Barbara.
Yes. Hi. I've just enjoyed this program so much. I'm one of Bruce's cousins on the younger side. Uncle Abe Janoff was my uncle, but to hear the wonderful experiences of Bruce, we loved him as a child. We loved Bruce, but to hear his experiences as an adult, it just makes him even more precious than he already was to us. So thank you very much for sharing these experiences with Bruce.
Thank you, Barbara. I think we all know from our experience over the years in the pandemic with Zoom that it's a pretty constrained medium to communicate. But what I'm going to do is, especially the photos, which I think are very exciting, and I'm sorry they couldn't be shared on this Zoom, but you will get them. And as I said, a recording. But the one thing I want to end with is that any of you that have any reminiscences in writing that you want to share, I'll be the hub and I'll make sure that I circulate them to everyone that I've found. So that's it. Let's keep Bruce in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much.